Hello, today I want to do a recommendation review video on the Inheritance Trilogy. So in this video, I'm not going to go into why I love this trilogy, know that I do, and I want more people to read it. I wanted to more go into why I think you should pick it up. So I'm going to briefly go over a brief synopsis of the trilogy as a whole and the first book, and then I'm going to go into things and elements of these books that I think you will like if you're a certain type of reader, or won't like if you're the other type of reader. This is very broad. This is based off personal experience, and I just hope this would be helpful because as I was looking on BookTube, I don't think this is a trilogy that is reviewed a lot, unlike her very popular Broken Earth trilogy. And so let's just get into it. The Inheritance Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin is a huge scope. It's a trilogy that covers 100 years. And in the first book, we are following these, it's called Aramari, I think. Aramari. These are people who rule the world. This is the empire. Every kingdom has their own leader, but there is one empire. They rule from a place called Sky, and they rule because they control gods. They use these gods as weapons. They are under their command. So if people don't like what they think, they send the gods to do their bidding. And this follows a character who's brought to Sky, and her grandfather tells her, "I am proclaiming you heir." Now, not to say she is next in line, she has to compete with her two cousins to get that position. And it's about her having to figure out how she's going to make it through this game in one piece. All right, so that's the premise of the first book. This is a whole trilogy that really follows the minglings of gods and humans on this planet and what happens just over these 100 years. Okay, so that's a brief synopsis of this trilogy. And so let's get into some elements that I think you should know about and to help you decide if this is for you. So first and foremost, do you like being confused when you read? I do. I love being in the dark. I love learning as I go, picking up the breadcrumbs, figuring things out. I love in the back of my head wondering, is it going to be this? Is it that? Oh, I bet it's this. I love that mental thought process. I love doing that. Now, if you are not like that, this is not for you probably. It's super confusing. It has a lot of unique character perspectives as well. It's not straightforward storytelling. It's very different. Now, that for me is a pro. If you don't like character perspectives that aren't straightforward, if you don't like being confused, I wouldn't pick this up. I also wouldn't pick this up if you have anything against the first person, because she does use that a bit, and I know some people have opinions about that. But for me, this is one of the things I love about N.K. Jemisin's writing. She uses very unique narrative structures to tell her stories, and it leaves me confused and intrigued the whole time. Another thing you should know about is I don't particularly think this trilogy is very plot-driven. I think it's very character and world-focused. For me, that's great. I was intrigued. I was very invested in these characters, and I never knew where we were going. The whole trilogy, I did not know what the point of the trilogy was. I was not sure what these three books, what the main story was until the very end, really. And even then, I'm not really sure because each book is a different point of view. So you kind of get invested in different characters as you read this trilogy. So that's another thing. If you like following a trilogy where you're following the same main character or main character set, this is not that. You are following the passage of time in this world more so than you are following a particular character. And I'm okay with that. Again, though, that's a very unique narrative structure. And I think something you should be aware of. And again, not a knock for me, but could be one for you. So that's another thing I want to put into it. But it is such a diverse world, so that's a big plus. These cultures are all so unique and well thought out. You really understand them. If you do get confused by the names, it has a great glossary. And it's just so well thought out. There were so many moments in the appendix or the glossary or just these little breadcrumbs. It's just so, I appreciate when a work is well thought out and it shows. And that's how it is here. It's a well thought out world. Now that said, it's not a hard magic system. It's about gods and magic in that sense. It's very fantastical in that sense. And you will learn some rules. There are rules, but there aren't many. You don't learn them all. And I think sometimes it's a little soft, which is not a knock for me. This is very fantastical, very God-focused driven, very lore driven. So if these are things that don't intrigue you, then I guess you shouldn't pick them up. I know personally I have been worn out a little bit with God lore in books. I've somehow picked up lots of trilogies and stuff lately where it's very focused on gods. But for me, this was done in a very fresh way. And I ended up really liking it without going into too many details, because I feel like we go into more detail about what a god is and what that means. And I think it gives you a lot to think about, which I found to be a major plus for this book. And the last thing I'll say is, if you've read the Broken Earth trilogy, I do think you will like the Inheritance trilogy. Just keep in mind, it's her debut series, and it's very different. The Broken Earth trilogy is really more one large novel, in my opinion, split into 3 parts. These are 3 individual novels that make up a more cohesive idea or complete thought. And it's very different. I think it's honestly more, the scope is larger. And I think what she tried to accomplish, I think she does. And I don't know, I still think about it. And I want to talk to more people about it because I don't think I've wrapped my head around it yet. And there's no one writing forums on it. There's no one talking about it. And I just want to dive into it more. And as I've been reading reviews by N.K. Jemisin on why she approaches fantasy the way she does and looking at it through that lens, I've been really enjoying it. This trilogy is very non-traditional in every sense, and I think that's a big plus for it, but it's something I felt people should be aware of as they decide if they should move up or down their TBR. It is by far one of the best things I've read in 2020 so far. Granted, it's February, but it is at the point where I am perpetually on Book Depository or Amazon or my local bookstore and going, should I buy the copies that are here now? Should I buy the omnibus? Should I wait for the new covers? And I'm moving in like 8 months, and I should be buying 0 books. So, just that, I love this series, and I think I want to read it again, which is why I want to maybe get my own copies. So yeah, it's non-traditional, but it's fantastic. For me, it was satisfying. Hopefully, knowing these things gives you kind of a non-spoiler way of deciding if it would mesh with your reading tastes and preferences. Because I know not everyone reads for the same reasons. It's very personal. I don't know why I like being confused, but it's one of my favorite things. And that's what N.K. Jemisin does for me. Definitely a new favorite author. I was thinking about that a couple videos ago, but no, I will read anything she writes. I still have a couple more books in her back catalog to get my hands on, and I will be doing that shortly. And if you like this, feel free to like, subscribe, comment. If you have more questions, if I haven't really touched on something to help you understand, please ask them. I will answer. I am more than willing to answer any questions. I will not give spoilers because I hate giving spoilers of books to people who haven't read them. I think I've even lied to my friends before when they've been like, has this character really died? And I will be like, yes, when they really haven't. So don't ask me those, but anything else, more than willing to answer. And just have a great day. Bye.